Hello, I'm Henry T, and welcome to 3 TV entities today. Henry T, Game Face Live, Comcast 26, and wow, the great big ProView network. Man, we're everywhere today, and I'm a little nervous today because the viewership is way up there. And really, I'm nervous and fired up at the same time because today we're going to interview a friend of all of us. You know, and I say it with great respect and not to take any of the acclaim of the name Savior away from the Savior, but here's a man that does the same work on earth. Every time I turn around, Jerry Walz is saving somebody, guiding somebody, helping them through something with his advice, with his law practice, whatever it might be. He's lifting people up. And you know, there's two kinds of people in this world, givers and takers. Jerry Walz is one of the greatest givers we'll ever meet. Long time, very successful attorney in New Mexico, known throughout the planet for his craft. And, you know, he's argued cases all the way to Washington, D.C. I think he took part in some legal work at the Supreme Court. This guy is so successful in his position, but maybe the most recognition he's ever had as an attorney was being, first of all, the beloved friend and attorney for the great 4-time world champion fighter, Johnny Tapia. We bring on Jerry Walz today, and I tell you what, Muhammad Ali told me, when you stop getting nervous, you stop getting the butterflies, go do something else. Today, I'm full of butterflies because Jerry Walz is with us today. Let's go to him right now and go down memory lane with this famous man. Jerry Walz, good morning. Man, I'm nervous. I go like this to you with great respect. How are you?
Well, good morning, Henry. And I go like this to you because you have been a friend, a mentor to us all, and we all hold you in the highest respect. I want to thank you for those very kind words, that wonderful introduction, and it touches my heart. And if there is somebody that's a giver who has helped the entire community through an entire career, who's been in the Sports Hall of Fame, is Henry Tapia. And so, Henry, thank you for on your program. I am the one that is honored, and I thank you immensely.
You know, let's just talk briefly about you, and then we'll get into that exciting subject matter of which we brought you here today for. You in your practice, you're so well respected throughout the planet, and I mean that. People around the world know Jerry Walz. But in our country, you're always on an airplane, you're always on your Zoom, you're always arguing cases that few people are considered to work. But you have this acclaim and respect of every big organization in our country. They go to you for a lot of things. If you don't mind, give us a little critique of what you do or a quick resume of who you are legally.
Thank you, Henry. I've been very blessed. I've practiced law for 40 years, and I've been very fortunate to do many high-profile cases, both civilly and criminally in state and U.S. District Court. I've also had an amazing appellate practice in state and federal court. And at the federal level, I have argued at least 60 times at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, including where now Justice Neil Gorsuch of the U.S. Supreme Court used to be at the 10th Circuit. So I appeared many times in front of now Justice Gorsuch. I have been fortunate to obtain many published legal opinions, as you know, serve as precedent, not only for New Mexico, but for the entire nation, that are cited on a regular basis. I've had the opportunity to work with very many high-ranking public officials, and I've also had the honor and privilege of working with individuals basically off the street. And I treat everybody the same way, and it's just been a great career, a great ride, and I'm very thankful. And along the way, of course, I got to meet people like Henry Tafoya. I had the honor and privilege of representing, as you mentioned in your introduction, Johnny Tapia from 1994 until around 1999, where he added 4 more titles, world titles, after getting his first world title when he beat Henry Martinez in the pit. So it has been a great ride. It's been a wonderful ride, and I'm not finished yet.
Wow. I told you, ladies and gentlemen, see, that's why Henry T's a little nervous today, because I'm with Jerry Walz. But I met Jerry. He's a very humble man. That's where we'll start. Humble leader, savior, Jerry Walz. I met him as he represented the great fighter, the great athlete from Albuquerque, New Mexico, from the Wells Park and Old Town Boys Club community. He represented Johnny for all those years that he just mentioned. Johnny was an athlete, one of the best I ever knew. Not only could he fight, but he was quite a point guard on the basketball court as well. But he was so talented as a fighter. He was very special. He had the hand speed, the athleticism, the foot speed to move around that ring and stay safe and stay away from big hits and danger. But he had the fastest hands maybe I've ever seen in the ring. And I've seen the great ones. Muhammad Ali, was he fast in the ring? Johnny was lightning fast. The attributes Johnny has as an athlete, why don't I serve that up to you and you be the articulate one? Describe what an athlete Johnny was.
I'll be glad to do that, but let me say that Henry Tafoya was quite the basketball player too. In the early days, Henry and I squared off at Boys Town on different teams, and back then the general rule was no blood, no foul. And Johnny Tapia, I had the honor and privilege of playing some one-on-one against him. While he was preparing for the Danny Romero fight, I went to Big Bear, and he had a basketball goal and a big wood fence. And he was quite the point guard, and I was in better shape, and I'm a pretty good ball player. And Johnny was so competitive. So competitive. I went up to block a shot, and he ended up going down to the ground and into the fence, and he popped up, and Teresa was howling and laughing, and Jesse Reed and Robert Gutierrez, and Johnny said, "Mr. Walz, that was some kind of a block, you know?" And I said, "Well, Johnny, don't drive on me like that, you know?" But anything that Johnny did, he was good at. Ping pong, basketball. Don King told me that Johnny Tapia was one of the best jump ropers that he had ever seen or worked with. And the competitive nature of Johnny Tapia, you got to understand that. He believed in this slogan, refuse to lose. And it was embedded in his heart, his mind, and his soul. And he called me out one night when he was living on the west side to play ping pong. Well, Johnny didn't know that I was a ping pong player and won some championships myself. And so, and anyway, we're playing 3 out of 4. I beat him, and then it went 5 out of 7. We finally ended up with him beating me 23-21 at 2 in the morning. I said, "You win, Johnny." And that's the kind of guy Johnny Tapia was. Multi-talented, multi-skilled, and the fast hands. Amen to that, Henry. Johnny Tapia was lightning quick. As they say, that without stereotyping, because you have to be careful these days, but he had the so-called speed of what was then called the black fighters and the heart and toughness of the Mexican fighters combined. And that's what made Johnny Tapia such an exceptional fighter. And that's why he won.
How did you serve him, Jerry? Why did he need your service? First, he got your friendship,
Yes.
and then you guided him. As an attorney, how did you help the great Johnny Tapia?
I think I helped Johnny in every aspect of his life and career. God brings us together for whatever reasons. People come into our lives that we can accept and embrace or go a different direction. And Johnny and I just hit it off immediately. And at the time, he was making $500 a fight. And he said, Mr. Walz, I need your help. I ran into him at Winrock Center, me and my then secretary. And the next day I said, sure, come by. He and Teresa came by, and Johnny was lined out on my couch in my office. And of course, I knew his basic story already, but there was this immediate chemistry. And Johnny needed to discuss things with me without going into attorney-client privilege material, but that had bothered him immensely, such as the death of his mother, issues relating to drugs that are well publicized that Johnny talked about himself, to various other issues that he had, and sought feedback from somebody that perhaps looked at it a little differently, perhaps more formal education, perhaps from a different perspective than just being one of the guys. And I know that he also turned to advice and comfort from Mr. Henry Tafoya and others. But Johnny spent a great deal amount of time talking about all aspects of his life. So I was more than just a legal advisor. I knew the boxing industry, I knew the sporting industry, I knew law very well. And it was a combination collectively of all these things. I was a former newspaper editor myself. I understood the journalism part, the publicity part. So it all just kind of worked together in a cohesive manner, Henry, where I could bring all my talents to bear with Johnny's great skills, and we were unstoppable for many, many years.
Wow. There were some serious issues that Johnny had that he ran into. Trouble comes in different forms and shapes. And unfortunately, he found a lot of that.
Yes.
But he was able to pursue his career with your guidance and stay away from the pestilence and the temptation that surrounded him. And where that temptation came from, maybe with old friends, so-called friends. He was such a nice guy. He'd shake everybody's friend. He wanted to meet everybody in the room. That's all great, but sometimes there were some people in the room it was not so great for him to hang around with. And it kind of took him down some paths that you had to take him off and put him back on the right road. Without breaking the parameters, what can you tell us?
Well, Henry, I think your analysis was exactly correct. First of all, I have never seen, I've been around a lot of famous people, anyone work a crowd like Johnny Tapia. Nobody could do it like he could, because he genuinely cared. Autographs, article of clothing, pictures, he had time for everybody. But also that same openness made it more difficult to have the ring of iron around him to protect him oftentimes from himself or things that he would do that might be self-destructive. So the best that we could do and I could do for Johnny was keep the lines of communication open, try to make decisions that would be helpful to him in his constant battle, as he said in his HBO documentary about his use of certain drugs. And it was an ongoing, and at times time-consuming endeavor to help Johnny out wherever and however I could. And I think largely we were successful. And I give a lot of tribute, obviously, to his wife, Teresa, and to, in particular, one of the so-called bodyguards, who was also a close friend, Anthony Marcus, also known as Big Ants. I tried to unify those around him in a common purpose to try to help Johnny the very, very best we could.
I remember the first television interview Johnny gave was with me standing in front of Channel 13 next to Paul Chavez. Paul loved Johnny. They loved each other. They needed each other early on. But then later, Paul told me, he said, without Jerry Walz, Johnny would not be here today. He would have been influenced long ago by the background. Jerry helped him in so many thousands of ways. And Johnny was sincerely grateful to you for guiding him. Do you want to talk about that? How he paid tribute to you and said, thank you, I love you, Jerry.
Yes, first of all, God bless Paul Chavez for those kind remarks. As you know, Paul has been deceased for a number of years now, and you're right. He loved Johnny Tapia from the bottom of his heart, and Johnny loved him. There had just grown a time in Johnny's career that it was time to move on. Not saying it was Paul Chavez or Johnny Tapia. It just happens in sports. It happens in movies. It happens in life. It happens in law firms. You just start taking different career paths, and you need different people. And I did not know about that conversation you had with Paul, and that's very touching to my heart. But when we focus on Johnny Tapia and the work that everyone did to help Johnny, the best I can tell you, Henry, is that it was an absolute unified effort wherever possible. Obviously, I had discussions with Johnny that I can never reveal based on attorney-client confidences, and some of the things that he told me were just confidential and will remain that way, just as other clients have done as well. But all I can say is that Johnny Tapia made a continued effort during the entire time I knew him to live the best life that he could. And he struggled with horrific memories regarding the death of his mother. He had many challenges growing up. He had individuals that were more than willing to provide him with various destructive narcotics and drugs. And he overcame so many obstacles. And I think that's one of the reasons that people love Johnny Tapia so much, Henry, is because Johnny worked so hard. His story was so well known. It was on ESPN, it was on HBO, Showtime. I remember Al Bernstein from ESPN talking about it, and it was in books, Ring Magazine. And so all of us, including myself and the great Henry T., we've all struggled with our own internal issues from time to time. And so we could affiliate with somebody like the great Johnny Tapia, whose issues were known publicly. And we watched him work so hard, so very hard to climb up in boxing, because you lose one time at a certain stage, it's back to square one and you might never get another shot. And so Johnny would work, and then he'd get arrested, or he would test positive for a drug, and he'd take a horrible fall, and then would have to work again to build him back up. And in a weird way, it was almost like a soap opera that people were watching. But here's the good news. Most people were rooting for Johnny to make it. They wanted Johnny Tapia to make it, and he did not let them down.
You know, he was a world champion.
Yes.
He was loved by all his fans here. What a following Johnny had. The night he filled up the pit against, in a championship bout against, was it Henry Martinez?
Yes, that was the first championship bout, Henry Martinez.
And, you know, talking to his wife, Teresa, God bless her, she was so good for him. And she relied on you, and she confided in you. But, you know, to have a talented attorney like you, without your guidance, promoters eat fighters up. Promoters eat athletes up. They exploit them. They take advantage of them. There was no taking advantage of Johnny Tapia with you in his corner. Way to go.
Well, thank you. And I am grateful for all my trials that I have done and being questioned by some of the toughest judges in our country, including the great Justice Neil Gorsuch. Because when you're dealing with and I'm not saying this disparagingly, they have to do what they need to do. But when you're dealing with the Bob Arams and the Don Kings of the world, and very, very talented negotiators who are looking to make money, because that's why they're doing this, you got to be at the top of your game. And you're absolutely right, Henry. Without the appropriate legal representation, without the appropriate knowledge, they will eat you alive. They literally will. I remember whenever we were negotiating for the Hugo Soto fight, that was at the Duke. It was called Duke Stadium there, and it was going to be on ABC television, which it was. And we wanted to get into the six figures. And I remember, and I don't mind naming names, the Goosen brothers and a few other people from Top Rank were there, and said, no, we're never going to pay $100,000 for a bantamweight fight. You know, get out of here. One guy who walked out of the room, and me and Paul Chavez were sitting there for a while, basically talking to ourselves, and we said, we're not going to do this, guys, unless Johnny gets at least 100,000 and cracks that market. And back then on bantamweight fights, going back to little Indian Red Lopez and so on and so forth, these guys were hammering each other out for championship fights for 15, 20,000. And here we wanted 100. Well, good news is we got the 100 and then some. And we started setting new records that I'm still proud of for bantamweight fights. And Johnny spoke of this even himself, that at the end he was making well over $500,000 a fight. And
Wow.
After Johnny's demise and me leaving that aspect of the sport, for what it's worth, and unfortunate, I have to say, the curve has gone back the other way. And thanks to Johnny and Danny Romero, he was very marketable. We had driven up the amounts being paid to those lower weight classes significantly. So we made a great contribution there. And again, that was a combination of their skill, Johnny Tapia's skill, and in all sincerity with my skill as well.
Wow. You know, this is a good man, and he gets emotional, and I've seen him emotional in the room with Johnny and the fighters, and they loved each other. I've seen tears in Jerry Walz's eyes because he was so close to Johnny. He would do anything and everything for him. They were brothers, if you will. And let me ask you the most rhetorical question of your career, Jerry.
Sure.
How much did you love this man, Johnny Tapia?
The love cannot be measured, Henry. It had no boundaries. And it was unconditional love. And I loved him as a brother, almost as a son, as a friend. There's such a mixture of different hats that I was kind of wearing. At times, Johnny almost looked at me as a parental figure. At other times, as an advisor, as a lawyer. Other times, as just Mr. Waltz. He always called me Mr. Waltz, just somebody to talk to. And it was an unconditional love, and I still will always have that love for Johnny and Teresa. That never goes away. And yes, there were many tear-filled times that I met with Johnny, and even at press conferences, sometimes I'd have to hold it in. And over the years now, it's much easier to talk about. And with a professional like yourself, you know, we can have these discussions without me crying or you crying. And that's great. That's great to have.
In our final minute,
Sure.
Johnny was inducted 3 years ago into the New Mexico Sports Hall of Fame and the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Those two awards, those two special nights, how did that impact you? How did that hit your heart?
Well, it made my heart happy. Now, I did not attend either one of those two things because my representation of Johnny ended slightly after his one and only loss, which I think he should not have lost on the scorecard, because I was also a professional boxing judge. I had my licensure, was the first Paulie Ayala fight. That was the very last fight that I represented Johnny Tapia at. I did the right thing. It's just like being a former president. Now that we're in the presidential election, you know, you should pack your bag if you're the loser, or you're no longer the person in power, and just move on and not be seen or heard. But having said that, I still follow Johnny very closely. Occasionally we would communicate when we'd see each other, and it was very, very heartwarming whenever Johnny received those honors. And I was very proud of him, and I was so glad that he obtained the public and professional recognition for his great career.
As we finish here today, you watched him work out. You're on the phone with him. You're having dinner with him. But as an athlete, what did you appreciate about the flamboyant, the exciting athlete, Johnny Tapia?
What I appreciated most was his charisma. I'm not talking about his athletic prowess. We've already talked about that. He was a great athlete. But he had this charisma, Henry, that few people have. You're one of these people that has charisma as well. But with all the people I've represented, including the governors, judges, judicial districts, high-ranking officials, gave advice to at least one president in my career. There's only a few that have that type of charisma. Johnny Tapia had that charisma, as do you, Henry. And I appreciated that a great deal, because it just doesn't come along. It's a God-given gift. And if you get gifts from God like you have, you can use it or not. And I think when people get these God-given gifts like you have, like Johnny Tapia had, and you don't use it, I think that's such a horrible waste of something special. But you've used yours, and Johnny Tapia used his, and I love both of you.
Wow. We reciprocate that same emotion towards you, because you've helped us all. In our final 30 seconds, I think they're telling me I have 30 seconds left. Was there something that you wanted to say that I didn't get out of you today?
Only that an instrumental person in Johnny Tapia's life was also the great Henry Tafoya. You helped him put food in his refrigerator. You were always there when we were taking heat, and let us tell our side of the story. And speaking for Johnny and myself, we're eternally grateful.
Thank you. We're going to do it again. Too short a time today. We'll do it again. I'll call you out and bring you in the middle of the ring again.
All right. And we can talk about education, Western New Mexico University, legal issues.
Ooh.
You know,
yes, that'll be part 2.
Okay.
With you.
Amen. Because there's a lot of things happening in the world of higher ed. I want everybody out there to get a degree either from Western or another college. And you can do it now, and I'll tell you how when we have our next opportunity.
All right.
All right, Henry.
And if somebody wants to email to get that information, are you free with that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
It's Jerry A. Walz at walzandassociates.com, or you can call my office, 275-1800. I'm not soliciting legal business, don't need that. I'm putting it there. But this is if you want some advice on maybe going and getting a associate's, bachelor's, or master's degree from Western or any other college in the state. I'm familiar with the system entirely.
Amen.
Amen.
Jerry Walz, a true champion, a world champion, no doubt about it. Thank you for today. Part 2's coming up soon, all right?
God bless you. I'm waiting for it. I'm calling you out, Henry. We'll have that session, okay?
Amen. Thank
Maybe I'll
you.
get to interview you for our very last time. I'd love to interview you as well. But we'll see how
Ooh.
that. There you
He's
go.
argued cases all the way to Washington, D.C. You think I'm going to put myself out there in front of this man who's so eloquent, greatest vocabulary on earth? No way. I just, no. Forfeit that opportunity.
Okay. But we'll talk about that later, all right? I know you're.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, Henry. Talk to you later.
What a great man. Jerry Walz. Wow. Touching moments.
Okay.
Great memories. And I watched Johnny grow up, and I watched all the pestilence and troubled days come his way. And I tell you, without Jerry Walz, he would have fallen hard and never would have been a 4-time world champion without Jerry's guidance, especially his friendship and the love that he just conveyed to you here in front of all you thousands of people. That's going to do it with Jerry Walz. And, we got a superstar guest coming up. You ever heard the name Marty Saiz? He's writing a book. Yeah, he's writing a book. And you and I are going to read it. And interesting and then some. We'll be back with Marty Saiz. You stay right there. Please don't go away. Oh, by the way, Amestoy Drywall and Indigo Mortgage, thank you. Man, I love the Amestoy family. Pierre Sr., oh man, what a ball player at Valley High School. And his sons followed in his footsteps. Little Adam and Pierre Jr., Pierre, a great soccer player at Bosque High School. And Adam, wow, what a Little League player. And later on, man, he's gotten into business, went to college, both of them with degrees. It seemed like yesterday I was broadcasting their games as little kids in their athletic events. And Dad, all-state baseball player at Valley High School, they wanted to say one of the greatest players in Valley Viking history. Way to go, Amestoy family. Indigo Mortgage, yeah, Ben Lucero, great high jumper at Mayfield High School, went to the University of Missouri, where he then went on to the Olympic trials and came that far. Oh, I mean, the bar came off as he high jumped in the final event, and it just slipped off the bar. That much he needed. And he would have gone to the Olympic Games representing Titletown, Las Cruces, in the great state of New Mexico. Today, he runs this great mortgage company, Indigo Mortgage. Give him a call. Give him a call today. And Kevin over at Canteen, serving up all that delicious food for the kids throughout the schools, all over APS. Great story. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to come back with Marty Saiz. You stay right there, and we'll be back with Marty. Don't go away. He's writing a book about New Mexico high school athletes, basketball players in particular. He'll be back with us right here. Don't go away.
Is this my car?
State Farm knows that for every one of those moments,
This is ridiculous!
there's one of these.
Is this my car? What? This is ridiculous.
This can't be happening!
This can't be happening.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Shut up.
Shut up!
Ah!
That's why State Farm is there, with car insurance for when things go wrong, but also here with car loans to help life go right. State Farm.
Talk to State Farm agent Marty Saiz or Michelle Rudolph in Albuquerque today.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number one. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth that's real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Ready? Now, 3, 2, go, Marty.
Hello again, I'm Henry T. Welcome to ProView. Welcome to Comcast 26. And welcome to Henry T. Game Face Live. And what an honor to be here. And talking to people like Jerry Walz earlier, ooh, man, gets the heart pounding, puts the adrenaline all in you, all around you. And now I go to another great friend, same kind of mover and shaker. Yeah, you know, Marty Saiz is a State Farm agent, but Marty's much more than that. I mean, he's a former great athlete. He's a coach. He's he's a counselor. He's so many things. And today, he's an author, a writer, if you will. And he joins us right now here on the biggest audience we've ever had, Comcast 26, Henry T. Game Face Live, and ProView Network. Now we go over to the comfortable confines of State Farm Insurance and join the man, Marty Saiz. Marty, how are you, buddy?
Good. Can you hear me, Henry?
Perfectly. Man, you sound like a broadcaster.
What's that?
You sound like a broadcaster. You and I have done over 1,500 games together in our friendship and our relationship. And I'm not afraid to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this man could put the words together and describe what was going on the floor. I had no reluctance whatsoever to say, Marty, here's the microphone. Broadcast, go. And he was good. He was very good. Man, it seems like yesterday.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's a compliment to say I broadcast, because I think that says we have a voice for radio, but not a pretty face, Henry. So, but yeah, well, no, I appreciate it. Go ahead.
No, it was an honor to be with you all those nights, serving thousands of kids. And then the kids got a CD to save for their future, to share with their children. And I get that feedback all the time. Henry T., I still have that CD you gave me when I hit the winning shot. And there were some great games you and I did together.
Yeah, it was fun. We were doing about 4 or 5 games a week, and be able to share some of the excitement of high school basketball, football. I was your guy on the field, and even did a few baseball games, but we had some good times.
Volleyball galore. We were somewhere all of the time. Your wife even got mad at me. I had you out of the house every night there for a while.
Yeah, that was a concern. So where are you going? I'm with Henry T. And so, but you can always listen to it on the radio to make sure where I was at. So we had some good times.
Well, that was a catalyst for you because you fell in love with that arena of athletes, high school in particular. And you were a basketball player and you were a basketball coach. What was it about the sport? What is it today about the sport in New Mexico that fires you up?
No, I've always enjoyed sports. I was a kid that, as a little kid, I was the one that collected baseball cards and knew all the stats for all the players. And, that's always intrigued me, listening to the games on the radio as a kid. And, I wasn't an awesome athlete, like you said earlier. I was a good athlete. I played 3 years of varsity baseball and basketball at Sebla. And we weren't very good. We was a new school, and but I just enjoyed it. I thank Coach Louis Iannone. I think I was a junior, and he says, "Hey, do you want to coach the boys club team?" And I was a junior in high school, and I said, "Yeah, I'd like to do it." And some of the friendships developed from back then. And so one of my point guard on that team was Joe O'Neill from ESPN 101.7 was my point guard, and I had a kid named Phil Rohr that I said someday this kid's going to be really good. And long story short, with him, he ended up being the APS all-time leading scorer until Bryson Alford and Cole O'Neill broke it recently in my research. And so I coached the boys club those 2 years and kind of enjoyed doing that. And then, I'd go to a lot of the games, and Frank Castillo took over after my senior year. And for a couple of years, I'd go watch the games, and Frank would ask me what I thought about the games. And I'd tell him, I knew all the offenses and everything he ran. And then he says, "You want to coach our freshman team?" And so I helped Bob Welch and myself coach the freshman team in 80-81 and coached with Frank for 4 years. And then became a State Farm agent in 1985. And then when I started coaching my sons, oldest son in 1995 in the boys in the Bernalillo County Leagues, I started there. And then Gene Pino, a couple years later, says, "Why don't we do AU basketball?" And so Gene Pino's got me involved in AYBL and in AU. And so I just have enjoyed it. And then you started when I was in management with Dennis Hodges, says, "Do you want to sponsor high school basketball?" I think in 96, 97, I think it was. And State Farm wanted to get involved with the high schools. And we did it probably, more than I ever thought we'd do.
And I'll tell you, he stayed in this arena. And now, as I prefaced to you, he's writing a book about New Mexico high school basketball. What a subject matter. So large, so many great athletes, so many amazing stories. And he's doing the research right now and writing the book. And I'm anxious to read it because he's doing a thorough plus job in the research and the interviews and gathering all the information for us to read. How's it going with the book?
It's a huge project. I've actually started this project in December of 2012, and initially started because of state records. I was kind of curious where Bryce Alford and Cullen Neal stood in the record books, and their names weren't there. And then I had a couple other good players that year, Sam Haywood and Andres Rivera. I had about 6 or 7 players on our AE club that were seniors that year, that John Dawson, DJ Blackman, some of those guys weren't in the state record books. And so for about 4 years, it was about state records. And then Ben Moffitt, who was a Albuquerque Journal sports writer, set up a basketball history in New Mexico site on Facebook. And so I would put the stats or things I would find as I was doing my research. And then one day he calls me and says, "How much stuff do you have?" And I looked in my folder, and I had over 2,500 articles and pictures. And he goes, "Have you ever thought of writing a book?" And then when he talked, he kind of convinced me to write a book. And he mentioned he was writing a book on the history of New Mexico high school basketball. I don't know what angle was, but he was battling cancer at the time. And so I'd never seen his manuscript yet. Somebody told me they would give it to me, and I may add some of his stories, because he was a huge inspiration of what I was doing. Then he also hooked me up with Chuck Ferris, who's probably the basketball historian of, especially on the coaches side and teams. He's done more research than anybody, including myself. And he's been a real big inspiration. So with his help and the NMA's help, I scanned all the basketball programs from 1945 to 2017, and then went camping for about 6 days and had all these programs, went through them, and said, "God, there's a lot of information that people don't know about." And so I decided I was going to write some books, 4 books, one on coaches, big men, playmakers, and scorers. And then my mom died in 2017, and I just stopped doing anything. And then thanks to the COVID and Facebook, I started up, and then in April I decided to just do one book on the history of New Mexico basketball. But I'm not going to be able to do just one book, Henry. We've done over 270 interviews, and there's so many great stories. It's probably going to be 2 books that we'll do. 2021 will be the 100th year anniversary of the first state tournament. So hopefully there's a state tournament this year, and but there's a lot of great stories and about coaches, players, games, moments. Yesterday I was talking to somebody, and they were talking about the Magdalena team being upset in 1968, and they lost the game. They were undefeated in the semifinals, and Johnny May, Johnny May, Henry, coached at Tulare.
Yes, Johnny.
I interviewed him about a month or 2 ago and didn't mention about this game, and he hit the winning shot to upset Magdalena, and the kids were crying on the court. Somebody took a picture of it, and that picture appeared in quite a few of the newspapers across the country, including the LA Times. Cloudcraft, Magdalena loses to Cloudcraft in last second shot, appeared in the sports page in the LA Times. And so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, there have been thousands of dramatic moments in New Mexico high school basketball history. Marty and I experienced many with the new era high school players, but when you go back in time and think about Dick Shelley and Nick the Stick Pino and names like Jimmy Pepin, who hit the last second shot or a shot with 4 seconds at Johnson Center to beat the mighty midgets of St. Mike's. And I was a little kid in the stands watching that game, and so many more. Of course, watching, they talked about the name Alford. Oh, man. All-time leading scorer in New Mexico history. Then, of course, Bubba Jennings, Nelson Franz, Steve Davis, who, by the way, is the president of ProView, and all those great, Adam Beadle, Ruben Arvizo. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's fun recalling the great names, just the names themselves, not even getting to the stories, but it's fun sharing the names. Those names are legendary.
Well, like I said, I knew some of these people. Some I heard the names, but to be able to visit with them and interview them has been a blast. I've been real fortunate. I have a good film guy named Dana Childs. Dana helps ProViews a lot. Dana's done an unbelievable job, real professional in what he does. And me and Dana probably since I think June 11th, we started this year doing the interviews, and we still have about a couple more weeks to do. The COVID has really slowed us down to try to secure gyms and stuff to do the interviews. But Dana and I probably have traveled easily over 10,000 miles since June. And again, we've been at 57 high schools across the state. There's a couple out of the Albuquerque area towns we'll be going to. We'll be headed to Melrose here, hopefully next week, in San Juan, and I'm hoping to go to Lubbock and do a special interview with a story that I think will probably be the most powerful story that I'll have in the book. And then I still need to go up to the northwest part of the state, but I pretty much have hit every small towns in the north and the south, big towns. Like I said, try to touch everybody across the state in different eras. I spent last Saturday with Coach Abe Estrada, who played at Lordsburg back in the late 40s and 50s, and then became a great assistant coach for Jim Holzman, and then later became a great coach at Rio Grande High School. Had a great interview with Coach last week. Interviewed you, Henry, and we talked a lot about history. I don't know how far back history, more than 100 years with you. So,
Man.
you know.
Well, you remember Abe Lincoln, right?
No, I don't remember him, but I mentioned you did, so don't knowing you.
I
So,
broadcast his games. Heck of a point guard.
yeah, I know. I figured, you've been telling me about all those stories for years. So, but no one's a legend more than you, Henry.
You're amazing. Well, how are you going to determine when you're ready to put this book on the shelf?
Well, I've laid out the chapters how I want to go. Like I said, I'm looking for stories, and I've started writing it. My whole goal is to have the book printed and ready for the public by mid-February, so it's been, but as I was going through it, I said, man, I can't remove that story. I can't take that story out. The book would be probably 600 or 700 pages if it did what I did. So it's probably the first book's gonna probably be about 300. I'll probably feature 10 or 15 of the, I don't want to say top players or top coaches or top games. I'm going to use a word called most accomplished, most accomplished coach, most accomplished players. And I'll let the public tell me who the best were, because I want this to be a good discussion. I want it to be a positive view of high school basketball in the boys area for the last 100 years. So, I'm going to go by accomplished. So people say, well, why are you doing him? Why did you do Henry T? Well, Henry T's been doing it for more than 100 years. So he's got to be the most accomplished broadcaster ever. So, there's some, it's been really interesting to find out who some of the players and coaches that probably 4 or 5 months ago I would have never considered. And so,
wow.
So hopefully positive stories and hopefully some inspirational stories that people will be able to enjoy and also maybe apply in their life.
This is the most unfair question regarding your book, but let me throw it at you anyway. Give me 3 exciting names of New Mexico basketball history that are names that are regularly spoken, that are always brought up in conversation. That's an unfair question because you got 300 plus. But give me 3 names that are favorite stories that we're going to hear about and read about.
Well, I personally think the most accomplished person in high school boys basketball is Coach Ralph Tasker. What he did down at Hobbs, I think he ranks in the top 5 all time in coaching in the country. And he probably would be the all-time coach because the guys ahead of him play, at least 40 games a season. He only played 30 games a season, and he coached for 50 some years. Just an amazing story. What he did to develop a program and integrate, and that's been one of the things I've learned is integrate Booker T. Washington High School, an all-black high school back in the 50s, and integrated to Hobbs because prior to 1954, there was no black players on Hobbs High School. And then in 1954, they integrated the 2 schools, and guys, probably the most accomplished player ever, in my opinion, is Bill Bridges. He played at Booker T. Washington in the middle school and ended up being one of Coach Tasker's first players, black players, and Bill had won 2 state titles, went on to the University of Kansas, became one of their all-time leading rebounder. The rebounding trophy is called the Bill Bridges Trophy, and then he played in the NBA for 13 years. So I consider him the most accomplished player ever. And then the most accomplished high school player, again, not necessarily the best, but the most accomplished player was A.J. Lackey from Camado High School. He's the all-time leading scorer, all-time leading assist, and all-time leading rebounder ever in career-wise in New Mexico. And he did that. He just graduated in 2019. And what was interesting, it was his coach, Kevin, his uncle, Kevin Lackey, who's the coach at Melrose. Melrose beat him his junior and senior year in the semifinals to knock him out of the state tournament. But it was his uncle after his senior year said, to his brother David, who was a coach at Kamado, you might want to check AJ's stats. He played there since 8th grade. He might have it. And so when they added up all his stats after his senior year of playing, they realized he was the all-time scorer, rebounder, and assist. And I thought that was kind of neat.
There's one memory recently with the name Alford and Pino and a basketball that I'll never forget. And you set that meeting up. Tell that story before we get out of here in 1 minute.
Well, like I said, Bryce is the reason I got this started. And he got on time on track and eventually broke a record that was held since 1963. The season scoring record, 1,050 points is what Bryce ended up with. Broke Nick Pino's record that was, like I said, 50 years. And I get a call from Nick Pino and says, I'd like to present Bryce my last basketball that I scored with, and we figured out to do it at a State Farm banquet. And Bryce, Nick, 7-footer, went on to a successful career at Kansas State. Presented that basketball to Bryce at the State Farm banquet that April, and probably the most memorable and most special ceremony that I've ever been part of. I thought it was so special of him. He could barely walk, get up the steps. Nick, God bless him, he just passed away last November. We're inducting him in the Hall of Fame. I wish he was alive to really reap the benefits of it. Gentle man. And so he presented that ball to Bryce, and a few years, I think we went to watch Bryce play when he was at UCLA, went to dinner at Alford's house, and there on the bookshelf is the basketball that Nick gave him. So a special moment.
Wow. Hey, I want to say thank you to you, my brother Marty Saiz, and we wish him well with this book. And I encourage you to be in the front row, in the front of the line when this book goes on the shelf, because it's not going to be there long. It'll be a New Mexico bestseller and more. And we're all going to say thank you to you. I read the promotional information you put out there on Facebook, and you get our curiosity. Oh my goodness, what a story. I hear from Adam Beadle all of the time, the great player at Las Cruces High School. He's anxious. I'm sure he's all over that book representing Las Cruces in that southern part of the state. So highlights everywhere. I'm getting fired up right now. Can I put my deposit down right now?
Yeah, you better, Henry. Make sure the check is good, Henry. I may even autograph it and double the payment for you. So no, you've been a good friend, Henry, and you've been an inspiration in my journey. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. Part 2 interview with Marty on this show coming up in the near future. He's got more to say, and we're going to help him produce that book and spread it throughout the land of enchantment. Marty, we'll see you soon, buddy. Take care.
Thank you, Henry. Have a good rest of the day.
All right, you too. Man, so I told you, more than a State Farm agent, and that's a bunch, because he's the best at that there is anywhere. Like a good neighbor, Marty Saiz is always there. Make no mistake about it. Well, thank you. Thank you for the Amestoy family and Ben Lucero at Indigo Mortgage and Kevin at the Canteen and, of course, Evergard Roofing and all of our people, Rax Lumber Company. They've been with me since the get-go. And thank you to State Farm and Marty Saiz and all that bunch. And thank you to our producer today. Yeah. When you think of Jimmy Tran, I think of quality and perfection, and all the great staff here at Provo, at ProView Network. Equipment right out of the box, brand new, state-of-the-art environment here at ProView. Thank you, Steve Davis, for allowing us to graduate into the big time. ProView Network, Comcast 26, and Henry T. Game Face Live. That's going to do it today. We'll see you real soon, and we'll be back here next Monday with another classic interview on Henry T. Game Face Live. See you later.